All right, so today we're going over Chapter 5. This book is old. Now, I don't think I'm telling you anything you haven't already heard, but when this book was created, the layout that you got by default was a relative layout. You've already seen right now, you get the constrained layout. That's the default. So a lot of things have changed. When you want to know anything, you should know this by now. All right, you go out to developer.android.com. So I did that, and this is what I found out there. I sent you the link to this, and it's just developer.android.com/guide/topic/declaring layout. All right, and I started to read through it right before class, and they talk about what a layout is, etc. And when you get down about halfway down into the article, maybe a little further, look, if you look, please, common layouts. So they explain to you what a linear layout is, what a relative layout is, and what a web view is. All right? Now, quite often with a web view may take up almost the entire page. And you might have like a drop-down list where you let people go to different websites or something like that, and you could put that into a web view. That's not that important, but the point is, all right, when you look at this, you'll notice these are hyperlinked to linear layout, relative layout, web view, etc. I am going to, for lack of better words, force you, when you do your next assignment, to do a couple of them using different layouts, just so you have the experience using them. So Chapter 5 talks about the specifics of using these different layouts. Now, a couple of you have already opened it, but just so you see this, what I gave you was this link, the one I just showed you, and I didn't have time to look at this, but I found, I guess it's here, a YouTube presentation that this woman did. It's an hour and 6 minutes long, where she builds a layout from scratch using the constraint layout. I'm sure there's stuff in there that I didn't teach you, for lack of better wordage, maybe I don't know it. So I'm going to look at this. I have no idea how good it is or is not. I do know when I looked at it.
Cool. So I think we can get started.
She's got 484 likes and 13 dislikes. You might say, well, big deal. Well, the thing is now it's a year and a half old, and only 500 people have looked at it. I should say 500 people have liked it or disliked it. All right? She's had 22,000 people look at it. So I don't know how good it is, but I'm going to, today sometime, I'm going to go take a look at that. All right? And see if it's good or not good, whatever. But even with that, that's my opinion as to whether or not it's good or whether or not it's not good. So if you look up on the screen here, this starts with a summary of the different layouts. So it talks about a linear layout, a table layout, a frame layout, nesting layouts, etc. So we're going to cover all that stuff. Then there's a summary of widgets. That's the other half of the chapter. So notice what they talk about. Editable text views, checkboxes, radio buttons. They call a drop-down list a spinner. Seek bar, images, show and hide widgets, etc. All right? So that's what the chapter is about. So if we take it from the top here, or hopefully from the top, if you're following along, if you do have the PDF or whatever, I'm on page 120.
It's going around right now.
All right, good. So it says the chapter, what's that?
Second edition?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, the chapter begins by summarizing some of the layout and widget stuff. So again, if you look up on the screen here, or you look, if you've got the PDF, all right, these are the major layouts. There are actually more than that. It is also possible to start with no layout and kind of create your own. That's not something you typically do in a beginning class. All right? The reason that this is important, when we get back from the break, when we get back around March 18th, I think, is when we return from the break. Much of that time for the rest of the semester you are going to be working on your own project. This project, the more I'm thinking about it, it's going to be worth pretty close to 1,000 points. All right? I'm going to show you balsamic because you're going to draw me your screen or your screens. I'm going to have very, very well-written requirements over what I want you to do. All right? But what I'm getting to is there's a pretty good chance you're not going to want to use the constrained layout. You're going to want to use something different. That's one of the reasons this chapter is important. All right? And then they summarize the widgets underneath there. Again, I'm not going to read this to you. All right? You can see them right there. So let's start. Okay? What we're going to do tomorrow, I didn't have a chance to finish it today. My fault. What do they say? My bad? Okay, so my bad. But when we start tomorrow, we're going to create, the first thing we're going to do before we even go through chapter 6 is we're going to write a quick little app. Everybody hear me? All right? And I don't even want to go through it right now because I haven't written it yet. It may change. So we're going to go through an app. Did you get it? Okay. Thank you, Andrew. So we're going to go through an app tomorrow. Then one of the things I'm going to ask you to do for your next assignment is make changes to that app. Did you all hear me? All right. It'll make more sense when we get to that point. All right. So turning up then to page 123. Notice everything that we are working with here is all under view. See this on the screen? Everything cascades out of view. All right. And if you look under view, one of the things is view group. Why am I telling you that? Because look under view group. Those are your layouts. All right. And under frame layout and linear layout, there are more layouts. So the view class, as it says, it's the super class for all widgets. All right. Also those widgets that can contain other widgets. All right. So they start with the linear layout right here. Couple terms for you to hear because again, these terms change over time. I can't say this to you too much. All right. You may have seen these already. You may not have. Let's say that this is my screen right here. I got this big square. See? Bless you. That's my screen. Okay? And I put a button on the screen. And it'll say button by default. All right? So when I put that button on the screen, if I set its size to match parent, do you know what happens? What? It becomes the entire length of the screen. When you set something to match parent, it's greedy. It takes as much room as it can possibly take. All right? So what's the other one? Well, there's other ones that you can use too. Another one, rather than match parent, is to use wrap content. You know what that does? What that'll do here is this. So it'll wrap and it'll take as much area in the area that it's in right now. Now, if you don't want one of those, then typically you'll overwrite it and set what you want. Does that make sense? All right. So it says here, if you need to create a user interface that displays widgets in a vertical or a horizontal line, you may want to use the linear layout. So they show some examples right here. All right. So again, you'll notice, all right, it gets to be, for lack of better words, a little confusing because you can put one layout inside of another layout. You can do that. Again, we probably won't do that at the beginning of the semester, but as you start to play with this stuff, you might say, hey, well, that's really cool for the app that I want to do. All right. I think now we're all okay with the fact, if you look up on the screen, I'm hoping that everybody's okay with the fact that you can either go and stretch this stuff out manually in the designer, or you can write it in the XML. It really doesn't matter which way you do it. All right. Most people that I've dealt with when they're starting, they choose to write it using the designer because they're just not used to writing XML. All right. So as it says here, a linear layout displays a column or a row of child widgets. All right. So if we take a look here, this is on page 127. Here are some of the attributes that you're going to use for this. Notice orientation. It says if you're laying stuff out in rows, do you want them rows, which means horizontal, or do you want them columnar, which means vertical? Does that make sense? All right. I will tell you, like I said, when you are doing your project, okay, I'm going to expect this to be, for lack of better words, pretty much professional quality. And I don't mean it's going to, push a button and it's going to make us fly. I don't mean that. But whatever it is you decide you're going to do and you present it, I expect that you're going to blow away the people who come here to watch. All right? And, if you say, well, geez, I don't know if I can even do that, then don't make something that's super complex. That's what I'm telling you. All right? So they show some examples. Notice, too, there's weight. Everybody see this? That's another fairly important property. Okay? If I put two buttons in a row and I start playing with the weight of it, by default, when I set them up, they'll be like this and like this. Does that make sense to everybody? But if I come through there and I set the weight on this one to 1 and the weight on this one to 2, what's going to happen is the one with the bigger weight is going to take up as much room as it can. All right? Just another thing to keep in mind. There's also gravity when you're working with this stuff. Do you want it right justified, left justified, centered, etc.? All right? When you start working with some of these layouts, it's real easy to screw things up. I'm just telling you that right now. All right? I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you guys, but I've been really hammering on the first year people this year in the C# class. When they go in and they're using C# and they build a form and they put all their components on it and they like it, I'm saying fine. Highlight all those components at once, right mouse click, and choose lock. I don't know if there's something that's similar to that here, not that I know of. All right, but it's very easy to move stuff. Once you don't want it, you got it in place, you can accidentally move it and the like. So they show you a horizontal layout with buttons with no weight, buttons with equal weight, a vertical layout. I think you're all good enough that you understand what they're trying to show you here, okay? All right. It says if you need to create a user interface that displays controls in a grid. So if you literally want to make a table, take a look up on the screen, please. All right. Sometimes you want to lay something out, and it's like, yeah, tabular format would work really well here. Okay. So when you look here, as it says, 2 rows and 4 columns. Okay, there's our 2 rows. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. There's 1, 2, and it's doing, for lack of better words, like a col span of 3 columns. All right? And they show you, what I like about this one is they show you in here, they show you the XML. Now, am I right? I'm asking you this question. At the beginning of the semester, I gave you all the apps that are in the book, right? Did I do that or not? Because I've got it on one of these things. If I didn't, I'll make sure that you get it before the period's over. All right? But you can try all this stuff. That's the best way to learn, is to grab one of their projects and then just start dinking with it. All right, then there's a frame layout. As they say, it's one of the simplest and most efficient of layouts. Notice you can use this type of layout to display one widget over another widget. So notice what they've done in the example here. They've taken that text and they're displaying it over the picture. Again, asking you this question. You remember back from first semester we talked about it. We didn't really do much with it, but we talked about things like a z-index and how you can move stuff to the background or the foreground. The bigger the number you give it, the more it comes to the foreground. The smaller the number, it goes to the background. That's the equivalent right here. That's what they're doing. All right? And again, they give you an example. They show you exactly how it's been laid out. All right? As it says, it often displays only a single child layout or widget. There's a lot of ways you can use this. As mentioned previously, you can also nest layouts. As they say, it's common to nest one linear layout within another to align widgets in columns and rows, as they show you right here. All right? And normally I would say this isn't important, but I think it is. Again, since you're going to have quite a few days to work on a final project, I don't care what layout you use, but I will expect it to look professional. If you've got a game and you only want that game to be played in landscape, I'd understand that. But if you've got a non-game, I should be able to take my phone and tip it or do whatever, and it should look good both in portrait and landscape. Does that make sense? So they show you, and the big thing, if you look up on the screen here, here's your outer linear layout, and you notice one of the things in the first row is another linear layout. All right? And you might say, wow, is there, how many of these can I have? Well, if you're working with a phone, you only have so much room. You're not going to make this 8 deep. It just wouldn't make any sense to do that. This is too deep. It probably wouldn't go much more than that. Also, as they say, when you nest too many layers, the system, as it has to constantly redraw itself and whatever, it can slow down performance. All right. Look at this first paragraph on the screen here. One way to prevent an activity from changing orientation is to go into the manifest file and set this. If you look up on the screen here, the line that they show you right here. That forces it to be portrait only. As you'd guess, you can also put landscape there to force it to be landscape only. All right? And again, it depends on what it is you're trying to do. All right? Last semester, one of my students, for their final project, they did a budget app. And they, I said, well, it doesn't look very good when you go and put it landscape. Well, you didn't tell us we had to do that. Yes, I did. Well, I only want it to be portrait only. And, they could make a case because it's numbers, etc. Maybe that makes sense. But the majority of apps that are out there are designed to run in portrait or landscape mode. If the one you create for your final project is designed to do both, it should look good both ways. Now, one thing you can do, look up on the screen again, please. I'm on page 135. The author says to provide, if you want, you can have a separate orientation file. Have one for landscape and one for portrait, if you want to. And the way you do that is shown up on the top here. Notice for portrait, under Res Layout, Settings Activity, all right, that would be one, and then you'd make a Res Layout Land where you'd put a landscape one. Again, that's fairly heavy stuff. Would you want to do that? It's not so much that you would or wouldn't want to do it. Again, the idea is that if you wanted to, you could do that. That's the important thing to realize. All right? All right. Next, widgets. Widgets are what we call controls. All right? First one they talk about there is an editable text view. Look up on the screen, please. There's two edit texts up there. The first one was set to type text, edit text. The second one was set to type text, password. Make sense to everybody? All right. They even show it in here. One was, I guess, one's text email address and one's text password. All right. So notice some of the attributes for the edit text widget. That input type, I already showed you that. Remember we brought out just the plain text, and then we went in and we changed the input type in our attributes along the side, our palette of attributes. All right, that's what they're talking about here. You can also set lines. That's the same thing that we had in C#, where you had a multi-line that you could set to true. All right, but here you put the number of lines you want it to be. Notice the default is set to 1. So here's some of the common, and even these, I think this is old. I think some of the names have changed a bit. All right, but you know this. I'm not going to get into, I don't know if I have anything up right now. No, I don't. But you saw this when we went in. Like I said, we put in a plain text view, and then we went into the type along the side, and you can make it anything you want. A couple values for this. All right, I'm going to show you guys something. I want your opinion on this, okay? All right, look on the screen if you would. This is one of the things I had the students do this semester for the C# class. I put some more stuff in it that I said they didn't have to do. All right, if you look on the screen, okay, so I run this. What their program was supposed to do was basically have a button. You click the button, it went online, and it found one of 6 different sayings that a fortune teller would say, and it would show it in a text box. Well, I said that's kind of a poor program. So when you look in here, notice what happens. First of all, this is a button. It might not look like one, but it's a button. So as soon as I click it, watch what happens to the image. Okay, great. I don't know what the heck just happened right there. I mean, I've run this thing, I don't know how many times, and it's never been a problem. So, of course, when I try to show you today, it would be a problem. All right, that's, oh, I think I know what it is. Okay, we'll fix it. All right. File, close solution, yes. All right, give me a second. Now I'm going to try it again here. Because I moved a bunch of stuff around today because it was getting, I had too much stuff on in my window here, so it was too hard to see. All right. So. All right. Let's see if this breaks or doesn't break. Like I said, hopefully this isn't going to blow up. All right, look on the screen then. Same one I showed you before, but now I moved it. So notice what happens here when you click the fortune cookie. All right? Everybody see this? So I'm clicking the cookie. See how it changed? It gives you a fortune, it counts to 5, and then it brings the original cookie back again. See that? I mean, is that great? No, it's not designed to be that great a thing. But what did I do in here? Well, I changed images, okay? And I said, wait 5 seconds, so I put a timer in there. I'm thinking of giving you guys this program as one of the ones for next time. All right? And give you a chance to play with it, put your own stamp on it, etc. What I did, again, you may care, you may not care, but what I did when I was doing this is I was bored with what they asked you to do. This is what they said. Create a program named Fortune Teller whose main method contains an array of at least 6 strings with fortune-telling phrases. The program randomly selects a fortune or two and just displays it when you click a button. So I went online and I found this guy's site, joshmadison.com, who evidently has made a career out of going to Chinese restaurants, because he had a few different fortunes, upwards of 325 of them. And some of them he had several times. So I took this file that he had online, I parsed it, okay, and here's my closed and my broken. So in other words, this is the broken cookie and that's the unbroken cookie. And then I put a timer in here. I would give you guys all of this code. Then I would ask you to try to convert it into an Android app. All right. Sometimes, to me at least, that's a neat way to learn, is to take something in another language that already works and make changes to it so it works in another language. All right. As it says here, some of the values, some of the stuff that you can do on here, notice state hidden. This is for the keyboard. State visible. Has anybody here, I'm asking you this question, does anybody here realize this? Okay, let's say, I'm going to assume right now you probably all have like the BMI app done, or at least the miles per gallon. All right, that's probably a fair assumption. And you know, you click the text field and that keyboard comes up, right? Have you noticed you can still use your regular keyboard? All right, you can turn that off so you can't. All right, if you want to do that. And that's typically what you're going to do, because if I'm running an app from here, I'm not going to be connected, you know, to a desktop or to a laptop. Checkboxes, again, you all know how to use checkboxes. All right? Checkboxes are, you know, if I've got in here, you know, how do you want this? You know, or how should we contact you? And I could put checkboxes in there for email, text, snail mail, etc. You could choose, if I gave you 3 options, you could choose none of them, 1 of them, 2 of them, or all 3 of them. Does that make sense? You can set one to be checked by default by setting the checked attribute to true. This is not that different from the way we did it in HTML. It really isn't. All right. Java methods for checking checkboxes: set checked, where you're going to either pass it true or pass it false, and is checked, to see if it's checked or it's not checked. Radio buttons. You know what radio buttons are. Radio buttons are for mutually exclusive choices. So if you look at the example that's on the screen here on page 143, you choose one of them. And you'll notice in the top they've got a vertical orientation, and on the bottom they've got a horizontal orientation. All right? I don't believe it's my job to sit there and say, you know, every time we go through a chapter, pick out 10 or 15 things and go, oh, they have to have that in their final project, and they have to have that, and they have to have that. But some of this stuff is important that you understand. So I'm going to put some of this stuff, all right, I'm going to take some of it and I'm going to put it on the assignments that you do, all right, just so I'm sure that you've had a chance to do some work with them. Spinners are what we typically call a drop-down list, all right? Now, notice what it says here, because you have not seen this. We didn't do this in the Android part. I am on page 144. You are going to learn how to use an array adapter. As it says, an array adapter is used to provide a list that the spinner should display. All right? What does that mean? Well, it's going to have all your drop-down options in it. There is an example. They show you how to set it up too. Here's some methods that you can use from the array adapter class. All right, here's some common methods you'll use with spinners. All right. Seek bar, everybody know what a seek bar is? I don't know if I showed you guys this or not, because I'm going to show it to you. I'll make it quick. Show you real quick how I'm planning on spending my my break, or at least part of it. If you look up on the screen here, the book that I used to use, and I think I even told you this, when I was at Blackhawk and I taught this class that you're in now and another one from iOS, the book I used for iOS, in the beginning of it, they built this. Okay? I have not seen this thing here built. It's called Bullseye. So it gives you a number. Okay? There is a seek bar that goes from 1 to 100. You're supposed to get it as close to 84 as you can. Okay? Then when you're there, you click Hit Me, it gives you a number of points. And it's even set up that there's rounds you can play, and you can have 2 players play. I'm going to see if I can take this with the notes that I have and convert it into an Android app. All right? Literally from nothing. And will we build it together? I don't know. It's going to depend on how long it takes. To me, I think, whether I'm right or wrong, that you are learning the most in this class, not from me, but by doing stuff and having something succeed or having something fail. All right? So there's an example of a seek bar. They use it in their tip thing. And if you look right here, they set the maximum tip to 15. All right, actually, I think the max is 30. And it goes from 0 to 30, so you can figure out what your tip would be. The seek bar is used on an Android app by dragging your thumb to the left or to the right. All right. Like I said, tomorrow this is where we're going to start. If you look, probably the most important part of the chapter starts on page 150, and it's 150 and 151. And that's how to bring images in. All right? You may have done work already with images. You may have not done any work with images. Tomorrow we're going to create an app, and one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to put an image in that app. All right? So you'll see how to do that. An image, as it says, that can be drawn on the screen is known as a drawable resource, and it's in the res drawable directory. We'll work with all this tomorrow. Notice, as it says, there's 4 folders that you can use in this drawable: extra high density, medium density, and low density. All right? The higher the density, you start jacking around, all right, with the DPIs, the density, pixels per inch. The higher it is, typically, the better it's going to look. Android supports PNG, JPEG, and GIFs, but you really shouldn't use GIFs unless you have to. They're going to look really bad, especially on phones. All right? You can hide and show widgets because there's a set visibility property. You can add scroll bars yourself. Be real leery of doing that because that can look pretty doggone ugly. All right. Going up to page 156 here, how to display web content. We're just about done. 3 or 4 more pages. All right. But on 156, it's how to display web content. So if for some reason you're creating an app where you need to go out to the internet, all right, I've even thought of this. Tell me if this makes sense to you guys. That I thought of creating an Android app, and eventually I'd have to make it for iOS also. But I thought of creating an Android app, so if somebody wanted to go out to my channel, I could give you basically a splash screen, and then if you selected something, you'd go out to my videos. That's a bunch of books and stuff. So as it says, the next figure that's on page 157 shows a web view. A web view is a widget you can use to display web content. Here's an example, all right? If you look on the screen, I find this to be the most interesting thing. If you want to use a web view, if you look here, you've got to go in and you've got to ask permission to do it. Think about why you have to ask permission to do it. Because there's a lot of stuff out on the web that you don't want everybody in the world to see. All right? So as the author says here, a web view uses a built-in browser to display web content. As a result, it can display any kind of content that a web browser can display, such as a web page. They're often used with progress bars. All right? Now, one more thing, and then we're done. But if you'll just bear with me literally for about 5 minutes, we'll be finished. So if you look on the screen here, we've gone through chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hopefully, they were explained to you well enough that between that and the homework, you understand that content. We just went over chapter 5 today. Tomorrow we're going to go over chapter 6, which is on handling events. All right? Next week, Monday, we'll take the first test. Tuesday, ideally, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we'll be going over chapters 7 through 9. Does that make sense? All right? But what I want you to understand is much of the stuff that's in there, especially I think it's either 8 or 9, it's so antiquated that we're not even going to look at it. We're going to look at other resources for that. All right? Then, in section 3, if you look up on the screen, there's this newsreader app. And again, to my knowledge, it's pretty antiquated. I'd like us to build that, but I'd like us to build that using the way things are today. Does that make sense? As opposed to the way it was when this book came out. Then we go over this task list app. We're going to do the same thing. We're not going to build the one they have. We're going to build our own. We're going to give it the ability to work with a database. All right? Then finally, when we finish up on how to deploy an app, that's when I'm hopefully going to have that bullseye thing I showed you done, and I'll deploy that out there to show you how it's done. If there's time, if you look up on the screen here, I have no idea if any of you have even started thinking about, oh yeah, I'm going to do this for my final app. You may not have a clue yet what you want to do, but you may want to do something with geolocation. So the last chapter in the book goes over that. Again, it's at least somewhat dated. But my plan, okay, just so you know this, if by next week we can follow this, what that means is by the 8th, we're through the first 9 chapters, okay? And next week will basically be lab. So by 2:15, we're done with chapters 1 to 9. Does that make sense? All right? Then that Monday is when we don't meet. All right, that's the 18th. But what we go over next, my hope is within 2 weeks, so that would be like March 1st, we'll be through chapters 10 to 12. All right? So that's 3-1. Then the next week, 3-8, all right, I'd like to go over as much of 13 through 18 as possible. We won't finish all of them. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, that's 6 chapters. We'd never do 6 chapters in a week. But my hope is that by the end of March, we're done with the book. Did everybody hear that? That's my goal. Then you will have all of April and the first week of May to work on your projects. And there'll be nothing else you have to do. All right? That's why, again, you should have enough time that you should be able to make something that looks pretty frickin' good. So that's the plan. All right? Are people making progress these first 4 assignments? Yeah, if you want, you can Bitbucket it. You can, I mean, they're probably pretty big. All right, that's the easiest way to do it. Do you all know this too? I don't know if you do or not, but if you go out to your Bitbucket location, you can create. If you go out to your Bitbucket location, you can go in there and you can go out and you can create a new project, and you can just drag folders right to that project. Did you hear what I said? That's much easier than doing git add and whatever. You can just take folders and just drag them right to Git and right to Bitbucket. You can just do that. That's probably a lot faster. I would say that whatever you do, once you start dragging the stuff over, please make sure it works. You understand what I'm saying? I want to be able to get to it. All right. All right. That's enough. So chapter 6 tomorrow.